Nicole Santiago, thank you for coming on the couch next door. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure.
I first found you, I guess, through Amber Olson. So she has had you on her media feed, her podcast. And as soon as I saw the work that you do and I listened to the conversation that you had with Amber, I was like, oh, this is information that I need to supply my listeners with because it's I think it's a niche of the world that is so needed, but I think people get so overwhelmed in it. So I'm really excited for you to be able to sort of guide us through what educational support and advocacy looks like, and also how that impacts mental health, not only of students, but parents, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm excited to have you. Why don't you
Oh,
tell
of
us a little
course.
bit about yourself, family, your work? Like, what do we need to know Nicole?
Sure. So yeah, I'm an educational advocate and I started off as just an IEP coach. I think I had to get a little more law training to feel like I could
Mm,
wear that
mm-hmm.
advocate hat. But I was an educator for a long time. I was a Spanish teacher, 12 years in the classroom. I taught middle school and high
Okay.
school. And I sort of, my business evolved because my family grew and my capacity for doing the work, the good work I needed to do for my 160 students and my three
Mm,
children just didn't
yeah.
work anymore. I realized that I was going to burn out and I definitely wasn't going to give up on my family. So I took a break from the classroom for
Mm,
1 year and started to build a business. And it was really organic the way it grew. I started serving clients in one capacity, and it showed up that they needed help in other places. So I think that's everything about my business. I started blogging about raising a child with ADHD and behavioral differences in
wow.
2017 because I, as an educator, all the background, the master's degree, and I could not
Mm,
help him.
yeah.
And he lets me be open about some of his needs. He's 18 now. And of course, through the journey, and a lot of parents can attest to this if you're neurodivergent, we found out both me and my husband have
Mm-hmm. Right.
ADHD. And then we sort of started learning about the diagnoses and how we can support. And so that's kind of where I grew out of. And I'm pretty open about my own
Mm-hmm.
needs as a human, but also wanting to like leverage my
Yeah.
gifts too and help families find the gifts and show those gifts to their school
Mm-hmm.
teams so kids can really be
Yeah. Yeah.
successful.
And so your company is Family ADDventures and it's
Yep.
ADD Ventures. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Which I
Yes.
love that.
Yeah, it is. Which is an old term. Yeah, it's an old term now. Nobody says ADD anymore,
It
but it
still
still
works.
works. So I
Yeah, no,
left
I
it
love it.
alone.
So
Yeah.
when you were in the classroom as an educator, I mean, did you also see like needs there? And then you had this personal experience, and that's, I mean, it sounds like probably a culmination of a lot of things that led you to this business. But did you notice things as an educator?
Yeah, and one thing that was interesting, so I was an educator in DC, and so we didn't have in
Mm-hmm.
Maryland, but the
Yeah.
DC area, and we had we didn't have paraeducators for the Spanish classroom because we didn't have enough paraeducators that were bilingual. So
Oh,
I was
oh,
doing
wow.
recordings, I was doing visual, I was rewriting things, I was doing all the modifications myself because I was going to make my students successful no
Mm,
matter what. I wasn't going to create barriers to my Spanish classroom just because they learn
yeah.
differently. But that's probably also why once I had my daughter, I was like, wow, I cannot do all of this anymore. And I was offered a vice principal position. And I said, and
Mm,
that's when I was like, okay, I have to make a decision right here. And this is going to decide the
yeah.
course of my life. Really, it's one of
Right.
those
Right.
moments. And I said, it's time to, and I wanted to lean into my family. My son needed more
Mm-hmm.
support too. I was like, I'm helping all these kids,
Yeah.
and my own son is really struggling. So that's kind of all those
Right.
things
Right.
working
And so you
together.
have three kids. Yes, and you'd
Yes.
mentioned like, and they all have different needs as kids do, right? Right? Yeah,
Right. Every kid is different no matter
exactly,
what, right?
exactly. And I mean, I imagine that was kind of a hard, I don't know, was how hard was that decision? Because I mean, it sounds like you felt like such a passion to make your students successful. But I mean, like you said, you have to prioritize your family and make sure that you have the energy and the bandwidth to support them and seeing your gifts really needed there first. That must have been
Yeah.
tough. Yeah.
First. And then, well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I was crying at the
Mm,
IEP table because my son wasn't getting, I was an
yeah.
educator and I couldn't get my son what he
Wow.
needed. And I was advocating in the same county I worked in, which is also a very hard place to
Hmm.
be. because you don't want to lose your job.
Right.
So that's a whole nother level and sort of what that kind of work
Yeah.
looks like. So those were some of those moments where I said, I need to choose him and we've got to do something different.
Even thinking about like what you just said, being in that position that you were trying to advocate for your kid in the school district that you work in. So, I mean, I think on the outside, people would think, oh, well, she's got the end, right? Like she knows the people, she knows the language, she must be able to get whatever she wants.
Yeah, I mean, on the PSO, supporting the principal, doing all the things at his elementary school. And he was one of those. He's academically does great. So we don't say anything wrong. Yes. It's fine. He'll be okay. He's going to grow out of it. He's one of those. That's why I really like to serve those behavioral needs highly, kind of kids that are academically okay. Although I serve all clients, that was sort of the niche because I realized there's such a need when the kid is looking good on paper, the school doesn't show up the same.
Right. Well, and so, I mean, I think it's just also very validating for parents when they don't feel like they're getting the services for their kids. I mean, it's not something that they're not necessarily not doing. But for you, you knew all the questions to ask. You knew what services were offered and you were still sort of hitting a brick wall. Oh, man.
Yeah. I mean, I paid for outside testing and now I always work with families and they usually do testing from within. I will say Texas is a different state and all the states are different. So knowing some of those nuances, I advocate in a couple states. Some I don't know well enough, so I'll give them a referral. But, it's different in every state. And Texas is better at testing.
Okay.
I will say, and that's a blanket statement because I'm sure there's some parents who'll say, no, they didn't test for me. But, we've got the advocacy leverage, you got the advocate, and you've got the right questions. You usually can get pretty far.
So, I mean, your bread and butter is really supporting parents in that IEP process, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean, looking at the records, all the reviews, I mean, it's a long process to really know a child well and know what kind of things, what services they could possibly need. And also my referral list is long. I mean, I have cranial sacral therapists that help with bedwetting, so many different vision therapy, just so many different ways to support children that I also help families kind of navigating and finding the right services and the right services that could be private.
Sure. Right. Yeah. And so, I mean, I'm even just thinking like somebody that's just feeling overwhelmed with knowing the questions to ask. Like you're a great resource to even just like sort through what are your first steps. And I know we'll get into that in our conversation, but yeah. And then that's why I keep that first call free because I want to help parents. I'm like, if you want to DIY this, here's what I would do. That's that 30-minute call. That's what that is. That's what I want to provide for parents. For sure. Okay. All right, Nicole. Well, let's start with your rant before we jump in. So what's your rant for us today?
I want to talk about ADHD and finding your people. I think it's really, really important, especially, and you don't have to be labeled ADHD. You could just be like, hey, I'm a little eccentric or I really am a connector. A lot of connectors find that, we're wanting to connect, but we feel shut off. A lot of anxiety gets in the way of connecting with the right people. So I feel like, but being really vulnerable and as a mom of children with different needs, my household looked different. If your kid's, not cooperating, you are stressed. If you go out to dinner and you're the kids you have the child at the table who's no longer a toddler, but still behaving like one and everyone's looking at you, that's shame. And so I think really being able to be vulnerable and be open, and you can see the people around you who get it. Finding those people, especially in your early journey, if you're parenting a child with behavioral difference or any difference, really matters. And then I'm building programs now with the most amazing, really moms I found for me, probably because I am one, but the OTs I'm working with, some of my other practitioners, we have such an amazing way to support our whole community because we've come together and we've found each other. So put yourself out there. Don't be ashamed and find your people.
Well, so, I mean, what I'm hearing is part of the reason finding your people is important is so you don't feel the shame and you don't feel that isolation. But how do you go about doing that? Because I think it's so easy to sort of silo yourself in that because you feel that shame, right? And so you're not necessarily, oh, you wouldn't believe what happened when we went to this restaurant yesterday, right? Like we don't really share that part of our day to day, and therefore it makes it harder, I think, to connect because, again, shame. Like we don't want to share that part because we feel that. So how do we do that?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is to go out and experience it. So I think a lot of times families will stay home. You know, we don't go out to dinner. We don't go to the park because my child will run away. You need to just go do it. And it's hard. And make sure, you know, I don't want your child running away.
Sure,
but
right.
You know what I'm saying? I want you to go out there and still be a part of society because we are all welcome here.
Right.
You know, we all have a place to be and a role to play. And there's people that you need to meet that are going to be put on your path, but you have to get out there. And that's the hardest part, because when your child screams all the time or throws food or whatever they're doing, you know, I have children that are non-speaking that I work with, different disabilities that you feel like just the physical disabilities. You can see it's hard to feel those eyes on you, but I want you to go out and just be who you are. And the right people usually show up when you go and make the effort. So I think that would be it. I do have my own gift is connecting with people. And so I will say that that's something that I personally have. I have found that a lot of people that are typically diagnosed ADHD have that gift where they can connect with people. Anxiety may get in the way, but once you break through that, I have found that. You know, and I'm
sure, but no, I think that's that's really good for people to hear. Well, and two, I just want to say it can look on the surface like a parent doesn't have any problems, quote unquote, problems with their kids. And it's so easy to compare. Well, this parent isn't having to deal with this particular thing, but sometimes it is, you know, really you being the one to go first and say, I'm really struggling here, because that might invite another parent to say, oh, really? Well, I don't struggle in that particular area, but here's sort of like a connection to the struggles I'm having. And what a way to help one another. You know, they may not be struggling in the same way.
Yeah, because when you're vulnerable, you empower others when you're vulnerable with your story. And that's the thing that I think, you know, I have, if you have someone who, you know, I remember I had a friend whose child wouldn't eat. And it was so hard. I mean, think about it. You're like, my child's not eating, they're not growing right. You know, that is so hard, but the textures or whatever was getting to the child. And there's all sorts of stories like that, like, you know, what you're saying. So go ahead and try to be vulnerable a little bit, and you never know how much you'll empower them and they can empower you. And even if the stories don't give you a strategy, it'll give you a way to commiserate.
And that's helpful.
And that's
oh my
connection.
Gosh. Yes. Well, yeah, in that particular moment, you don't feel as alone because you are hearing the struggles of another parent. Yeah. And that's very empowering. Yeah. So don't compare yourselves, people. Like everybody's got a thing.
Yes. We all have a thing. We all have a thing. And no matter if you have, even if you don't have a diagnosis, there's still things. Every human is going to have those things. And so for parenting, it's big. Yeah.
But I love that advice of get out there still. Like, yes, it's hard. And this is a really, that may be a really hard version of hard that you're dealing with. But the only way to be able to find that connection and to commiserate or feel validated is to get out there so that you have more opportunities to do that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And be safe. I mean, one of the reasons we built sensory spaces around San Antonio is because with fencing or whatever it is because if you have those eloping kiddos, you know, whatever, where can I go to be safe with my kid? Yeah.
You know? Well, and going to those places, you probably, I mean, the likelihood of connecting with other parents that may be going through something similar, right? Like that's a higher likelihood that you'll be able to connect with those individuals. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. I love it. All right. Well, you ready to jump in? And I mean, we kind of already did a little bit, but I'm excited to really dive into some of these questions on what advocacy and educational support looks like. And specifically, this topic is important to me because I hear friends, clients, even personally, like parents that struggle to know what to do when their kid is having a hard time in the school setting. And like we were talking about, sometimes it's just hard to get them to school. And now you need to advocate for them. Now you need to ask the right questions. Now you need to know like what resources are available to ask for. And so again, when I was introduced to you and seeing the kind of work that you're doing and the amount of knowledge that you have personally and professionally, I know that you have a lot of information that you can help guide and encourage and like give people some hope, and even be able to connect with you, to have you, your company, your resources be able to help advocate for some of these students that are having a harder time, and parents that are having a harder time. So I'm real excited for people to hear from you. So let's start with, like, because this is a mental health podcast, how does that impact? Like, if a student is struggling in the educational life of themselves, like, how does that impact their mental health? What does that look like?
I think, when we think about competence is what I like to think about. So what are you competent in? What are you able to do? You think about a child when they learn how to ride a bike, right? They try, they don't give up. And then eventually they ride the bike. And it might take a little while, but they usually get it. If you're going to a place every day and you keep falling off the bike and you never master it, you don't want to get on the bike anymore.
Yes.
You just don't. There's no one standing behind you to hold the bike. Maybe you needed to go down a hill to get some momentum. That's not available for these kids. And so they're showing up at a place where they know they're going to fail. There's no one to hold the bike so it doesn't tip. There's no one to balance the handlebars. There's no training wheels, nothing. And who's going to do that to themselves? Who's going to keep working at a job as an adult where you feel incompetent? Nobody. And think about competence builds confidence. And that's what these kids are missing. And confidence is what builds your mental health. When you feel confident and you feel like, I've got this, and there's also a lot of integrity there where you show up for yourself and can do the things you tell yourself you're going to do. You tell yourself, today at school, I'm going to pay attention, but there are no supports in place for me, and I'm continuing to fail. That is not confidence. That is not competence. That is not self-integrity. That is a recipe for poor mental health immediately. So I think for me, that is my soapbox. The reason I started this, and we had suicide in our family. We have other addictions and different things that come with ADHD, and both my husband and me. And those are also some reasons that brought me to this work, because how do we protect kids and people from how to grow your mental health? There's a lot of different tools, and if you're continuing to fail where you go every day, like if it's your job, school refusal is the first 100%. Thing. It's the first sign I look for. Yeah. So, but that's really, to me, what it is. That's what starts with the mental health and the down curve of the anxiety, depression, school refusal.
Yes. Well, and I think that's, to hear you bring that up, when I think about like the work I do, and whenever I've had teenagers, and I've had several that have been on my caseload over the years, where they're like, I'm not going. And they're telling me the reasons. I'm like, I get that. Wouldn't want to go there either. Yeah. Because you've got to go to this place where all of your peers are there, and now you have these adults and nobody understands you. You're getting criticized, or you're fading in the background and nobody seems to, think about that as an adult. Why would you quit that job, or you would move somewhere else, or you would find new friends? But as a kid, you don't have the agency to do that. So you develop anxiety. You maybe develop an addiction to try to cope with, the feelings of failure and the narrative that's being created in that, because you feel constantly like you're falling short. It sounds like, from your perspective and what you're telling us, it just becomes like a snowball effect.
Yeah, it grows really fast. And and the self-medication thing is really huge. Texas recently, last year, enacted a no vape policy, and there are vape shops all over the state, because certain Delta 8 and things are legal. So I had a couple students who, they would have trauma from the drug dogs.
Sure.
Think about German Shepherds following you around campus, like trauma that you don't even think of, but they would see the dogs and they freeze and they don't want to go to school anymore. They're not bringing in anything to school. Maybe they're with a friend who brought it, but all of a sudden they're in that circle, and all of a sudden the dogs are on them, on their lockers. Yeah. It's just a small glimpse of man, who wants to go there? You're
Yes.
getting chased by
Right.
dogs at school. I don't think I'd
Yeah.
want to go either. And that's an
Sure.
extreme example, but that's what these kids can
Mm-hmm.
face. And the younger ones are just, they're falling asleep at the table, not being addressed, so they're getting in
Mm-hmm.
trouble. In school suspension, all of those things. I mean, in school suspension for a young child doesn't make any sense. Right. But
Right.
this is what we're doing, right? The school to prison pipeline is a real thing. And that's another huge soapbox of mine and why I
Mm-hmm.
do the work I
Mm-hmm.
do. So how do we make it so they have the right support so they're not just getting in
Mm-hmm.
trouble all
Mm-hmm.
the time?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then if you can't read, and school is reading, writing,
Yeah.
and arithmetic.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
school is, right? So if you can't read and people just pass you along and you still
Mm-hmm.
can't read, you're not going to be successful. And then again, competence and
Yeah.
self-integrity is gone.
Yeah.
Confidence is
Okay, so let's talk about like recognizing signs that your student needs an advocate, or needs some of these additional
gone.
resources.
Okay.
So what are some things for us as parents to be aware of? Or maybe even educators. I mean, educators may also be listening. Like, what do we need to notice?
Yeah. I mean, the really great thing is a lot of states do screeners for
Okay.
dyslexia, but dyslexia is also
Yeah.
a spectrum. And we're finding that some of the holy grails, Orton Gillingham, some of the certain programs that you think are it, which is like
Mm-hmm.
Take Flight comes to mind, may not
Yeah.
reach that child. So sometimes the screeners aren't
Mm-hmm.
always there. If you find your child is struggling with
Mm-hmm.
spelling, that's a big sign. If they can't remember like words, like if you're using word walls or you've gone over sight words and they're just keep
Mm-hmm.
forgetting them, you want to look at that. For dyslexia, if they're just, a lot of times it can be audio processing. So you don't realize, but audio processing disorder. So I want you to get an audiologist. Think about an audiologist, because the way you hear things and the way you process it, that's why you can't speak it or say it or read it, because you hear it differently. So audiology is really important to audio processing disorder. And sometimes, a lot of times, ADHD is misidentified as audio processing disorder. And this is interesting, but anywhere where it's warm, like Florida, Texas, where kids are
Mm-hmm.
swimming a lot, they can get water in their ears at a young age, and then they are constantly not processing sounds right. But they hear it the way they hear it, so they don't know
Sure.
there's a difference.
Huh.
So those are some little differences that you may know. So if your child was swimming a lot, or like a little fish as a kid, and they're really not, you feel like they don't hear you sometimes, or they're saying things oddly, or they're just not getting it with
Mm-hmm.
reading. And the spelling is way off, think about dyslexia. With everything, the first test too is to request an assessment from the school. Just request a full independent evaluation. Say, I want a full independent evaluation in all areas of suspected disability for my child. There's
Mm-hmm.
13 areas. So request it all. Again, if your child's doing pretty well academically, they might say no. That just means you have to build some data. You have to talk about, hey, my child was on homework for 2
Mm-hmm.
hours and they're 7 years old. That is a huge red flag. If your child can't get basic tasks done, they also might have executive function
Okay.
deficits if it's ADHD. So are they able to listen to you and process directions? Are they able to complete a task if you give 1 or 2 steps at a time? If you're giving 5 steps, they may not. But if you're giving 1 or 2
Cannot.
steps and they cannot recall step 1 and step 2, this is an executive function
Okay.
deficit. It's a
Right.
difference, right? So you want to look at those things. If you feel like they're
Mm-hmm.
forgetful, if they're forgetting things all the time, and you're like, man, I thought we put that in your backpack together, and
Yeah.
it still didn't
Yeah.
get in there. Though that's a big sign they may have an executive function
Okay.
challenges. Social is, and I think parents forget that it's social, functional, and academic. School
Right.
is all
Right.
3 parts. So when you're requesting that assessment, you're also requesting a speech language pathologist come in there and look at
Mm-hmm.
communication, look at their speech. I think with speech, it's pretty easy because we'll hear it right away. So a lot of times parents will know to get that at 3 years old, you can start getting speech language pathologist services
Yeah.
from your district. Usually parents can hear that, and the pediatrician will identify that. It's things like
Right.
executive function, ADHD, where you wait till you're 6 or 7, that's when the parent might know right away. Also, if you have a difference, if school
Yeah.
was hard for
Yeah.
you, please, it's probably going to be hard
Yeah.
for your child. So maybe you didn't get tested. Hey, change that narrative right now. Get your child tested and figure out what the problem is for them. So they're not like, oh,
Right.
I just, I hear parents like, man, school was so hard for me. I was so glad to finish. It doesn't have to be that for
Right.
your child.
Absolutely.
It doesn't. It doesn't. You have a whole a bunch of professionals that can like really support you. And it gets overwhelming. I think you can get in the weeds a little bit with all the different testing and diagnosis. But I will say just starting the process at school can be helpful. Ask for that full independent evaluation and really get the ball rolling.
And so what you're also saying is if your kid isn't having any like real struggles or noticeable struggles, maybe behaviorally they're not a problem or they're easily redirected, the school may say, well, I don't know that that's possible. So what you're saying then is like really start to document what you're noticing. Like they're forgetful or, they're spending 2 hours on homework. Start documenting those things and then you can present that.
Those things, even or melting down on a play date is a really big sign. Like if you're seeing that you'll try to have a friend over and after 20 minutes, depending on the age, like if they're 2 or 3, 20 minutes is great. But if they're, 8, 9, 10, and after 45 minutes, they're really melting down about their stuff being touched or about things moving around, really uncomfortable. Communication wise, if they're not making friends, I'm really big on, are they making friends at school? Ask them, who do you sit with? Who's your friend at school? Who are you talking to? And inattentive ADHD kids, which is me, we can be in our own mind and be perfectly happy. I am watching a movie in my head. I have no idea what the teacher said, but I'm probably smart enough to pick up some keywords and I got it. But that also is really, really hard because then if you're zoning out in conversation as an adult, you're not going to make friends. You have to be focused and be able to engage. So look at the social part too. The functional usually sticks out. If they're not potty trained by 6 or 7, you probably figure that, there's something going on with my kid. But if there's other signs with functional too that sometimes we miss, the vision therapy is a big one. Sometimes when you're looking at, like, for example, let's see, you're thinking about my child might be dyslexic, they can't recall the words. But if there is a muscle-eye connection that's off and they're getting really tired when they're reading, like they fall asleep or their eyes hurt, that's another symptom that you can look for.
Okay. This is really good. These are like things that I didn't know. And when I think about myself, I was diagnosed with ADHD a couple of years ago and I'm 43. Yes.
Really?
So speaking of changing the narrative, like when I think about like, so my youngest, he was diagnosed, I think when he was like 7. Classic age. But when he started struggling, and he wasn't struggling educationally, it was more the behavioral piece. And he's very charming. So he didn't start getting in trouble until February. Because he could like play the game and do the things and teachers really liked him. And I think they gave him a lot of passes in that because he was very likable. But once February rolled around,
likable and sweet.
Yeah, when February would roll around, they're like, I cannot get him to sit down, and he is now having a hard time with redirection because he's feeling a lot more comfortable. And, and so it was like year after year, when February would roll around, we would get the phone calls and it would be much more serious. And so, I started to look at that, and then even talking to clients that are women in their 40s and they're getting diagnosed, I was like, okay, like I'm identifying way too much with all of this. And yet with all of these things, exactly. And then when he got that diagnosis, I was like, okay, I need to investigate that because school was always really hard for me. However, I was a good student and I didn't have behavioral issues. And, in the 80s, ADHD looked like, the kid in the corner that's barking or running away, right? And I wasn't doing any of those things. And so it's really funny now because, we're very open and he knows that I have ADHD. And so anytime like maybe I forget something or lose something, or even like if he does the same, he'll go, ADHD, am I right? And he fist bump me. Like, yeah, we're in this together.
Yeah, I love that you're commiserating over it. Yeah, you're in this together. Yeah. And that's where I think parents can really leverage the team.
Yes. Yeah.
Like we're on a team here. We're going to work on this together, and that is huge because in a way it builds your bond even stronger because you have more that you can relate to and more ways you can help.
Well, because he can see, I'm not doomed, right? Like, look, my mom,
look,
my mom is an adult and she takes care of things and, so, I mean, but it doesn't make it like there's something wrong with you, or you're faulty, or you're a failure if you've lost something, if you forgot something. It's like your brain just is operating differently. I mean, you're really good at all these other things. It's just harder in these other categories with the executive functioning to operate the way that maybe other people do that you may be observing. Yeah. So I love you like that you said, just changing the narrative. Because I do think some parents in our generation may have a different view of that, because, ADHD back in the day it didn't look different, but it was diagnosed differently, like those signs and symptoms.
Yeah. Right. Diagnosed differently, and also the way we treated it. So like, you were expected, the way that we were parented and the way our parents were parented was a way where you didn't talk about all your faults, right? Like, we're a little more open now. It was like, you better suck that up. You better get the good grades. If you lost something, well, I'm not buying you another one, so figure it out. It was just a different level. And although I love the high expectations, and I'm huge on high expectations for everyone, never lower your standards, definitely give supports to reach the high standards. So, yeah.
Again, you think that something is wrong, and there's not anything wrong. Your brain just works differently.
And I think, and the character flaw is a huge thing. I really, through my 20s in college, because I didn't start suffering in school till college. All of a sudden I was failing, but just because I wasn't going. It wasn't because I couldn't do the work. I just didn't, I wasn't interested. And that interest-based nervous system, like, I didn't really understand that back then. My mom ran a tight ship, so I did what I needed to do, right? As soon as I went out to college, it was all over. And so, that's another thing where we have these we think these are like, I'm flaky. And we identify with a character trait like it's a trait, and it's not. I'm like, actually, that's a neuro difference. So it's not a character trait, and there's ways to support you so that you can have an extra calendar and have reminders and have a friend call you. There's a lot of ways to support it, so you're not flaky. You just need some support. And so that's what I hate, is when it becomes a character trait. Because now you're self-identifying with something that's really not you. It's something that, just a different way you see the world. So how do we get it? So your way of interacting with the world, support that, so you can still be just as successful as you should be, because everything else is all here. Just getting you through those little hurdles.
Well, and I've heard too from like parents of teen clients, when we start talking about accommodations or IEPs, 504s, to help them be more successful in school, I have definitely heard, well, I don't want to make it easier for them. Right. I don't want them to feel like, well, they are always going to get extra time, or that they're going to get special treatment. So what do you say to that?
Yeah, so that's where you really have to explain, like, kind of scientifically, like, this is actually a brain difference, and these are the needs. I have visuals I use of executive functions, all 8 of them, what it looks like, where they're weaker or higher. I actually assess for executive function too, because I do some executive function coaching too. And you really have to paint a picture for this person. That it's, and again, my favorite, there's 2 memes that I think of. One is the boxes at different levels, where your equality, where like you're standing on different levels of boxes, like all to see the same fence, but some kid who's shorter might need a taller box to get over the fence. And there's also the one where, okay, we're all going to test. This is the test today. And it's a fish, an elephant, and a monkey, and they all have to climb the tree. So that's another good, just remembering that not everyone looks at it the same way, but we all have to get to the top of the tree. How do I help my student get to the top of the tree? They are a fish, so they may have to have a water slide to get up there. What is that going to look like? And so that's when they can really do that specifically designed instruction. And educators love this. They use their brains, and a lot of us are ADHDers. They use their brains to build cool services and different out of the box ways of getting the kid there. And they love that. They let them be creative, present it as a question. How can we get my child there? I know they're capable, but we have to do something different. Does it look like you're recording an audio of a presentation because they really struggle with reading the notes because they're dyslexia? Or does it look like they really have a ton of social anxiety? Maybe they can just memorize their speech instead of having to, record it. Whatever it is, there's all different ways to change it, to make the project work for them. And again, you're never lowering the standard. You're just making it so everybody can get over the top of the hill. And why should some kid have to push a huge boulder and another one they're just walking? That's not fair. and that's not what education is. Yeah.
As an adult, I'm not going to get in a job where I'm constantly doing presentations if that stresses me out, but I get to choose that. Right. But as a kid, if you are in a speech class, which is required and you have to do it, is there another way to do it where you're still doing the work and you still get the grade and you show that you have that skill, but in a way that's not going to create the mental health part, the anxiety, the narrative of, I can't do this, I'm a failure, so I'm not going to school.
I can't. Yeah, I'm not going to school. And the cool thing too is that you might be able to get that student to get to a 2-minute conversation by the end of the year. They could do a 2-minute presentation, but you just have to scaffold it up slowly, build in the supports, make goals. And that's what specialized education is. That's what an individualized education plan is. So the fact that we have the capabilities of doing this, schools are able to do it. Of course, resources are tight and more than ever. That's always been a problem, but the squeaky wheel definitely gets the grease in this case, and you have to stand up for your child. You have to advocate for your child. Don't back down. And if you feel like you're not sure, get a professional, because for me, I've seen parents make big mistakes just because they didn't know something. I had a client who lost like probably $25,000, $30,000 worth of services, of compensatory services, because they signed them away by writing a complaint and giving up on the timeline. They didn't know the timeline. And I'm like, this would have been a due process case, compensatory services. And they had done a complaint. Once you've done the grievance, the timeline was over. So if you think there's something especially big that you're like, this really seems off, like, I want you to call a professional. Okay. I really do. And we're here. I know we're not everywhere and it's hard to find us, but we are here. If you search educational advocate, things will pop up. COPA, I can
we'll include the resources
too. We can put in the show notes. Because there's a lot of places, directories to find us, and we are here so you don't have to make mistakes that can change your child's entire educational outcomes, and I don't want that. I want them to be successful. And
and I think too, like, especially if maybe this is your first kid in an educational environment, I think it's very easy to have the misconception that, but the school's for my kid, which I'm not saying that schools aren't and educators aren't, but kind of going to piggybacking on what you're saying, they also have limited resources and limited bandwidth to focus on your kid. So as much as they want to be able to help them, they can't solely focus on gathering all the data and finding all the resources and making sure that they're getting access to those. And that's when having an advocate and having a professional in this niche can help guide you in that. And I know something that you've said is sometimes when a parent or a family brings an advocate to one of these ARD meetings, that sometimes they get a little tense. So can you speak to that real quick?
Yeah. So advocates have long, and this is Texas, I'm not sure about every other state. Some states I've seen, like Michigan, I don't know, it depends. But in Texas, advocates are typically the accountability system for the school, because, they are rolling right through, and the schools do what they want to do, and they do it bigger in Texas. We know what to do. We're the professionals. We've got this. We know more about you than your kid. I've seen that a lot. I've seen tactics where they'll have 12 professionals come to a meeting with just me and a mom. And that is definitely, a scare tactic a little bit. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, bring all the people you want. I'm going to say the same thing, and I'm still going to be speaking truth here. So what do you want? But I think the biggest part is with being tense, try to relax. Like, one thing I'll tell my parents is bring a bottle of water and just take a sip of water, ground yourself in your body a little more. It is a negotiation. Unfortunately, although I like to think of it as being a collaboration, and I'm very collaborative, it is a negotiation. They have services that you want for your child. Yeah. In the end of the day, that's what it is. Yeah. So you have to remember that it is a negotiation. So you coming with a kind and open sort of aura about you can really be helpful. I've been in meetings where I'm like, wow, this, and also, one of my outcomes working with our advocates, and there's 4 of us, one of those outcomes is to be a better communicator in the school and you. So building that relationship is huge. If you don't have a good relationship with your child's school team because you're always fighting them on everything, and that's okay, I get it. Some people are like, oh, you're not giving me what I need. but sometimes it just, that can break down the
Sure.
communication too. So, when those meetings are tense, be prepared with your data, be as calm as you possibly can, drink that water to signal to your advocate, I'm losing it here, please step in, or whatever you need to do. I love Zoom because I can text the parent at the same time and just be like, hey, we're going to go with this. You can kind of talk to the side and see what's happening. You can always table a meeting if you feel like it's too tense and you're like, you know what, we're going to table this. I don't feel right about this, or I don't feel comfortable. By law, you can table it and say, I need more data, or something's wrong. I want my husband here, and we need to reschedule this. And it's hard to get all those educators back together. But if you feel like it's not right and it's off, table that meeting. No, I'm going to call a professional. This seems like y'all are against me, and you know what you want to do already. You don't have to say that. You can just say, I don't feel comfortable. I want my husband, or I want to bring a friend here to take notes. Let's table this and let's meet at another time.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think another thing that I've heard you say too is bring a picture of your kid, right, to these meetings.
Oh, yeah. Yes, that's huge. Yeah. Remember, it's a person. Yeah. So that is huge. And also, you can make a recording of your child.
Oh, yeah.
So what I like to do is say just a voice note, because a lot of times in Texas, like, we're trying to always invite the child to the meeting. Honestly, depending on how that school psychologist talks about deficit-based language, I may not want the child there. It's up to the parent, but we'll always get that little voice note. What's your hardest thing at school? What's your favorite thing at school? Or what do you feel like you need more help? And listen to the child's voice. Start with that. And remember that it's, either a little 7-year-old or it's a 14-year-old or whoever it is. And I've had kids come to the meeting for the first 5 minutes and just talk about what they wish they could have, or, what's working really well with this teacher. That's gold. And this is a person. I know it's a lot of professionals at the meeting, but at the end of the day, it's a human child, and they want them to be supported and grow into blossom into what they can be.
Well, and it has such a huge influence on the trajectory of their life. This it sounds dramatic, but I think it's true. This is going to help sort of shape who they're going to be and what they're going to do with their life and how they feel about themselves. And we need to pay attention to that, and we need to foster that in the most healthy, positive way we can. And so seeing them as a person first, rather than, oh, here's this mom again, coming in. Well, no.
Yep. And then just read off their objectives. Here's our progress report. Check, done. And you go through the meeting, you're like, what were they even talking about?
Yeah. And so it sounds like, too, just for parents to be aware of, if you sort of already feel that tension between you and the school system, an advocate can be really helpful, not only just to be sort of like on your team, but also to be able to speak over some of that as somebody that lives in this space, again, as a parent.
Yeah, like another professional.
Yeah. A professional that's for you.
And you don't have, you're a professional, and they don't have the emotional load that you do, right? One of the reasons why it was hard for me to advocate when my son was younger is because I was emotionally attached to the outcome.
Yeah.
And of course, with my clients, I'm emotionally attached. I want them to do well, but I'm not attached the same way. So I can be much more objective about what's happening. And I think that's really important, to be able to have that emotional load taken away from you. I can be emotional about this, but my advocate's going to clear up. If I'm start to come to tears, the advocate can take over and say what she wants to say is, or whatever it is, and be that calm professional in the room, because they get heated, they get sad. Parents get sad. Of course they do.
Yeah.
And because they're talking about their baby.
Yeah. And you can see the forest for the trees, right? Like, you can see what we're trying to accomplish, rather than getting stuck in some of the minutia of, you're hurting my feelings and the way that you're talking about my kid. And so, that's where it can be really helpful to have somebody else to be able to speak to that in those meetings. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I feel like you've kind of answered this, but I would like if you could just give a high-level overview of initial steps parents can take to advocate for their child. So, a couple of things that we've already addressed, like if you start noticing some of these struggles that Nicole's listed, pay attention to that. So what would their first step be? It sounds like to ask for an assessment from the school. If the school pushes back on that, gather data, then ask for that again. Then what? What does that look like once you're able to start?
Moving forward. Yeah. So once you've requested the second time, and sometimes outside data means an outside professional. Okay. So you also may go to in Texas, it has to be a medical practitioner, so a nurse practitioner or a pediatrician to get the
Right.
ADHD
Okay.
diagnosis. Once you've got a diagnosis, that's really great. But remember, it's an educational team decision. So if you bring the diagnosis, but the team says, well, the ADHD isn't affecting them in educationally, remember, medical is a different language than educational. So your child can have autism, level 1 or whatever, but the school's like, it's not affecting them educationally. They're not qualified as having autism on their IEP. They may not qualify for services. So you have to think about, sometimes those outside diagnoses can really help, but also what data do I have? Just, hey, this is happening. And one of the key words to use, things like regression, I feel like they're regressing in their progress. That's a really big keyword you can use. I feel like the mental health thing, I bring that up often. They're sad. They're refusing to go to school. That's a red flag for educational teams too. They're not connecting. I feel like they're not making friends. And then they seem like they're doing okay at school, but they're stressing out. They're saying that their self-talk is really poor. Things like that you can use. And the school doesn't always know. So just be open. And, you can even say, we're trying a new medication. And I would like the team to come together and see, what that we have a medication, we have this diagnosis. What does this look like at school? What other supports are we missing? And, most school teams, when you have some data and you're asking the right questions, which is for a full independent evaluation, then they're going to come. They may not give you all the whole battery of tests. They may say, okay, you think it's ADHD. We're just going to do these kind of tests. And that's okay. I always want the full battery of testing, and I'll word it in a way that they're going to do it. But as a parent, we're just talking about what a parent can do, just make that request. I have templates for that too. But I think that's the real first step. And then the next step is going and talking about what's available. And going through that assessment is a really big deal. A lot of times a school psychologist will call a parent. And that can be actually overwhelming because they may use a lot of terminology the parents are not familiar with. So they're like, I just had a half an hour
and I have no idea what any of that means.
And I don't know what happened.
I've heard that too.
And they get the report and they're like, and I read the report and I still don't know.
Yes.
It's like, it's because it's very, it's the educational language. And so that I think an advocate can be really helpful there to kind of help you go through what that is. Also ask the right questions, ask questions. Wait, what does that mean? Take their time at that prep call. A lot of times they'll do the call before the actual IEP meeting because it's going to take so long to go through the data of the testing that they'll try to pre-do that. And then you can kind of have a little more time for discussion about services because you've already gone over testing results. But hey, if you want more time, you're like, I'm not really ready to talk about that because I still didn't understand the testing, then say, hey, let's do another ARD. And you can always table that ARD. Don't forget your rights, so.
Exactly. How does a parent know the resources to ask for? I'm assuming, an advocate is going to be super helpful with that, but is there anything for parents to know specifically to ask for?
I think you want to think about counseling services, speech language pathology. Those are two big ones. You want to think about occupational therapy if they're having sensory issues. A lot of times that can be like dysgraphia, handwriting. You want to do dyslexia testing. I want to test them in reading, mathematics calculation. There's a lot of the specific learning disability in math, calculations, specific learning disability in reading. So you want to ask about those. And then, you feel like there's some social and I think we know if our child is not connecting the same way. So we might know to ask about autism or ask about ADHD. Of course, if that's in your family background, you probably want to ask about that. But I found a lot of my families who weren't diagnosed don't have those type of neuro differences that show up in academically, right? So if your family has generations of, grandma was autistic, she used to collect certain things or whatever, I'm being general here, and she liked her alone time, and then, it's kind of trickled down, it may not show up academically, but you can still request the testing and it plants the seed in the team's mind. Maybe this student's going to need some other help in these areas, even if they don't qualify education.
Or they don't maybe need it specifically in this way now, but just like in the future too. I think that's the other thing that and I've heard from other educators, like make sure you advocate to have these meetings every single year, because the school's not going to say, well, the 504 plan is up or the IEP is up this year, we need to meet again. need to meet again. And again, I think sometimes if this is your first rodeo, you just assume, oh, well, the school's got it. Like, they didn't ask for it, so it must be fine. No, like, you need to revisit this at least every single year. Or if it's not working, right? Like, if the plan is not working,
Yeah.
you need to have another meeting and you need to come up with another plan.
Right. And I think that's huge, and that parents don't know that they can always, you're a member of the
Right.
ARD committee,
Yes.
right? The annual review and dismissal. Don't forget dismissal, because the idea is to dismiss your child eventually and get them right on par. So the ARD committee, you're an active member
Right.
of that committee. And you, as an active member, can request that meeting whenever you want. So if you feel like something's off, and this is when you already have your plan. So you did the testing and you got a plan. Whenever you feel like it's off, request that meeting. I wouldn't request them really willy-nilly, because you're going to ruin your relationship a little bit with the school if you're like, hey, something happened, request an ARD. But still, use that. That's your right as really the most important member of that ARD team, of that ARD committee. So make sure you're using that to ask what's happening. And a lot of times you'll hear, you might hear, oh, we're going to do response to intervention. RTI is something they'll do a lot. We're going to do response to intervention, see how they respond to this intervention. We're going to do it for 6 weeks, and then we'll see. I don't mind response to intervention if they're starting, but if you feel like they're holding your timeline back from really getting services, then you need to say, actually, I don't feel like this is working. Let's meet and talk about what are the progress. Here's the data I have, because that's another way schools try to get around doing a full plan is they'll do those response to intervention services. And that any student has those. There's no law protecting you. It's not IDEA. You're not getting that Individual with Disabilities with Education Act support that you get when you have an IEP.
Okay, so they might try to do that to avoid a full-blown meeting and plan.
Okay. Yeah, and even a 504 plan, the same thing. So sometimes I'm like, this child really needs an IEP, and I'm like, they're on a 504, really? And that was my son. My son was on a 504 for years, and I was like, this behavioral need is stronger. He's okay academically, but we really had to lean into behavioral needs, and that's when they realized he needed a full-blown IEP for addressing behavior. That's okay. You can have that.
Okay.
So I think all
you
those
just
things
brought up
matter.
a good thing I think we need to define. What's the difference between a 504 and an IEP?
Yeah, so a 504 is going to accommodate the environment. So say, for example, you're sitting close to the teacher because it's hard for you to focus, so you need to be right on top of the teacher, or not near distractions. You're not sitting near friends. Maybe you're getting accommodations in that you're allowed to leave late or early, depending on if you're overwhelmed in the halls. A lot of times medical needs are 504. So if you have to have your blood sugar tested, you need an accommodation to be able to leave to go to the nurse's office whenever you want, right? Those are accommodating. You're accommodating the environment. You're not changing anything about the curriculum, and you're not providing specifically designed instruction. So you're not getting dyslexia, like Take Flight or Orton Gillingham instruction. You're not getting behavioral support and social skills training. You're not, getting on and doing lessons. You're not getting occupational therapy. You're not getting none of those services are provided when you're doing a 504. You're just accommodating the environment for the child. When you're getting into your individualized education plan, now we're getting services. We're getting all those accommodations too. So no one needs two. Once you've got an IEP, you get the accommodations too. That's part of it, but that's just one part. Now you're looking at services. You're looking at testing and what else they need. You've done the testing, and now we've come to the point where we're like, okay, we did the testing. Accommodations is not enough. We need specifically designed instruction to support their learning. And they may get pulled out certain times a day for certain instruction. Sometimes they push in. We'll have a parent educator come in and help go over the math again, or they're doing math calculations. Something like a calculator, right? That's an accommodation. It's just helping you. Whereas a teacher coming in and teaching you the math facts, that's specifically designed instruction.
Okay, that's good to know. You've said a lot of encouraging things, but what do you want to leave parents, educators with as far as like their encouragement if they're listening and they have a student in their class, or they are a parent and their student is struggling? What do you want them to hear as kind of your last words of encouragement?
Two things. It's a little different for educators. Here's the first one that's for everyone. If you see a child struggling, you know the right thing to do is to ask for support. Speak up. Say something. If you feel like your child doesn't want to go to school, or they're getting in trouble all the time as a parent, something's wrong. And the school has the resources to support that child. So ask and pay attention and ask, because, it's a 4-step system in Texas and you're in juvenile justice system. Do you know where the most disabled people in the state of Texas are? In the Texas juvenile justice system.
Yeah.
So if you want to know where they all are, they're there. And it's because child find, they were not identified as a disability at a young age, and they suffered through, and they're now in juvenile justice system, and it's not a good place to be. We know that. So that's like the big, that's the other end of where you could also have, you have your child who's dyslexic, who's a lawyer. Think about how much reading that is.
Right. Yeah.
But they got the right support. Right. So I just want people to realize the difference it makes when you identify it early. Early intervention is so key. So pay attention. If your kid's not happy, something's off. Pay attention to that and make a change. Make the request for testing. If you're an educator, schools are not being as supportive of educators. I found sometimes I want educators to talk to the parent.
Okay.
Don't send an email, because your school's not going to like that. But talk to the parent, right? Because then you're, as a school, they're going to say, why are you telling the parent to request our resources? You're not going to do that. So talk to the parent directly, even a text message. Don't do it. Try to talk to the parent directly and say, hey, have you thought about, and it's really hard, but just say, hey, I feel like, the child is struggling more than they have to be. Is there anything else that I should know? Just like that. Don't ask about testing or anything. Just, is there anything I should know? Is there any other way I can help them? I feel like it's not a good environment. They're not doing well. And also, I will say to teachers, if you are burnt out, please take a break, because you can hurt kids. You can hurt kids. It's really possible to hurt kids with your stress. If you're dysregulated, so are they. Please, 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 please take a break, take a day off, mental health day, whatever you need, but don't hurt kids. If you're burnt out, and the system is overwhelming, and I get it
for sure,
but
they have a hard job.
Take your break, take what you need. It's you're doing something so amazing and impactful. So, just it's that one, like the Spider-Man with great power comes great responsibility.
Yes, for sure.
So, that's what I would say to teachers.
What is your encouragement to parents?
My encouragement to parents is that I really do feel like you're the one to make this difference. You're the one to change the narrative. You're the one to change the generational outcomes. You're the one, you were chosen. And it's hard to think, why is this so hard? But you were chosen for this. Not to say just go on and keep battling and I'm strong and I'll get through it. No, use your support system. But get the right professional help, get the right people on your team, start building your team. You have to educate yourself on what's out there for your child. You just have to. You have to educate yourself on what's available. Or if you don't have the time or bandwidth, please call a professional and get that help. I mean, I hear stories and I immediately am like, I'm going to connect you with this person. We're not even advocating. I'm not even helping them at school, but I'm putting them in touch with a therapist that I'm like, you need this particular person. I want you to visit this person. It's just that important to talk to somebody. A therapist is huge, because y'all have a lot of resources to help families, and I think that's really important. Suicidal ideation is so awful, and I've seen that a lot, even for 7 and 8 year olds. I've gotten calls.
It's really
sad. And it's heartbreaking. So positive affirmations is my favorite accommodation. Say them, teach them. They say them to themselves. They write them at the top of their test paper. I can do this. I am strong. Whatever you need to do, just get those in there and teach them to the kids. And a lot of elementary school teachers are amazing at doing that. The upper grades, they get busy, but
well, are there any? I mean, going into our self-care segment, is there anything you mentioned the verbal affirmations? Are there any other self-care tips for students that are struggling in the education system?
I think, again, you need to find your people. Connect. I want you to get involved in your community. I want you to get involved in community. I don't care if you don't even like the cooking club or you don't, find something. There's something for everyone at school. And I feel like the disconnect is really, really hard, especially with how much they're on social media. I love the phone ban. I know some people don't like it. I'm so happy with the phone ban. It's good. So I think it's actually better for connection, but I think you have to be involved in your community. You need to go out, and maybe you're not an athlete, so you're not going to do sports. Fine. There'll be a club, something, gaming, esports,
Yes.
something,
Yeah.
something. Find something. And if you're a parent, encourage your child to do it and really don't let them say
Okay.
no. I did this, and I'm saying this from experience. I did not get my son as connected when we moved to his school environment as I should have. And I know that impacted him. And I think it could impact a lot of people. We need community. So I want to say, you know, find your community as a kid, check in with your counselor if you need to, be open. If you don't want to go to school, be like, tell your counselor, I don't want to come to school tomorrow, and tell them, you know, they have resources. They can let you know. So then you're not truant and you end up in truancy court over it.
Yep.
So, you know, it's within 10 days, that's it. So just knowing, you have it, and try to find an adult on campus you can connect with, or, you know, that club, doing your positive affirmations. And really, you know, sometimes you're just trying to get through it here and there. Like if it's a class you really don't like, okay, this class is only 45 minutes, kind of pushing yourself through a little bit, and also knowing, okay, if it's too hard, I can fall back on parents or the counselor or my club, my friends. Just having that support system is going to be so important. Eat and sleep. I know none of my teenagers sleep enough.
No.
But that's really huge for your brain. Sleep and eat, you know,
basic needs.
Get some sunlight, come out of your hole, come outside, you know, be outside. And I think those are some things that can really help kids feel better, just to feel better, you know, feel better about themselves, and find something you're good at. I want you to find something you're good at.
Yeah, that's the confidence piece, right? Gifts. With the competence. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. We had a teacher who was teaching unicycle riding. So he taught a lot of kids how to ride their unicycles, and then he had unicycles out so they could just go ride their unicycles around. That was elementary school. But I think some of those quirky things are really fun for kids, even high school. You know, paper mache, whatever it is, go shine, go find what you're good at and do it. So you can build up that confidence and that self-confidence that you deserve.
That's really good.
You're here to make a huge impact, and you have a great purpose. Let's help you find it so you can grow into who you're meant to be.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Nicole, what do you do these days to take care of yourself well?
So I think I'm really good at sleep. I really sometimes I'll be on my phone too late, but I try to be like in bed by 10, up by 6. It doesn't always work out for me, but I try to do that. I'm really big on walking every day, and I try to get to the gym as much as I can. So exercise and sleep is huge for me. And connecting with my family, connecting with my husband, downtime. I think this is huge, and I'm a go-getter. So I want to do all the things, but sometimes I'm like, stop.
Right.
You can slow down. And that's my affirmation. You know, you're worth it. It's the best things take time. You know, I'm worth it if I don't get everything done. I'm worth it to just be here and absorb. And I think we forget that too. That just by showing up, just by being here, we are worth something. So don't, you know, just feel like I've got to get the checklist done.
Yeah, slowing down. That's self-care a lot of times, for sure. Yeah.
And the kids like that too. You know, take your time doing the dishes. Take your time setting the table. You know, slow it all down. You know, slow everything. That stuff that you think that should be 5 minutes. Maybe it's 15.
And that's okay. What's another 10 minutes for that particular task?
Yeah.
Yes.
And that might be the moment where they open up and say something that they wouldn't have said if you were rushing.
Yeah, because that opens up more space for an opportunity for that to be talked about or shared. Yeah. No, that's really good. Yeah. Okay. I want to talk about the work that you're doing in the juvenile justice system, but I want to ask first, like, is there anything that we didn't cover before we jump into that piece and sort of wrap everything up?
Yeah. So I'm going to put this out there, and I'm going to give you the link to this. So the Neurodiversity Center that's open at the Winston School, which is a school for children with learning differences with a high potential. It's college preparatory. And they have a neurodiversity center, and I'm coordinating all the different practitioners. I have 9 already. If you're in the state of Texas, this is also online, so you can get into our collective and be a part of this group. So please reach out.
Absolutely.
Or reach out to me.
Yeah, for sure.
Let me know that, hey, I have a service that helps neurodivergent families or kids, and I'd love to be on the website and part of the collective. So that's really big. I'm really excited about that. And then I think otherwise, I think no, I think that's everything. Just that was that last piece, and then we can talk about the
Yes.
nonprofit
Okay.
too.
So
Yeah.
so you mentioned, like the most what did you call it? The most underserved population, or
Yeah.
is
Yeah. So, well, no,
the
the
most
most
disabled
disabled
population
population.
is those in the
Yeah.
juvenile justice
hmm
system.
Juvenile
And
justice
and we
system.
talked
Yep.
before, like that is kind of my heart. Like that's where I started my practicum, and just love that population. And I think I even told you, if I could make a living off of serving that population, I would still be doing it. Getting to meet them
Yeah.
when they're detained or in their homes, like, oh, I just loved those
hmm
families, and I loved the work. And I mean, just, I don't know, I think some of the funniest things, like just the honesty, but also a lot of the families just were eating up the services because they didn't have access otherwise. Like their kid went to jail and now they get a therapist. Like, this is great. Like,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah,
Right. No, and that's the
yes,
reality.
yes.
That's
It's a
that's the reality.
tragedy that
Unfortunately,
that's what had to
yeah,
get
it's a
them
tragic
connected to
reality.
mental health services. But for a lot of families,
Yeah.
that's the only way they could do it. Okay, so
Yep.
tell us about your nonprofit.
Yeah. So, and I love that you said that. So that's why Child Find is so huge. If you request testing, they're going to find and identify that child with a mental
Mm,
difference or whatever, and they can start
yeah.
services right away and stop that
Yes.
pipeline from
Yes.
occurring. But I'm glad I didn't even realize that much about your background. So
Yeah.
thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that. That's such important work. So Neurojustice, we are a nonprofit. We are
Mm-hmm.
new, so we are still building out our systems. But we train. So I used to train the police, SAPD. I still do it when they really need me, but it's gotten
Mm-hmm.
busier. But two other nonprofits. So we trained the San Antonio cadets on autism. And then
Mm,
we said, who we really needs to be trained are the
yeah.
magistrates, because the magistrates are those volunteer
Right.
lawyers who are sitting there overnight
Right.
court. And if you can't identify that this person is autistic or has a
Yeah.
brain difference, and you're going to put them in jail
Yes.
with everybody
Whew.
else, they're not going to even know how to communicate their
Yeah.
needs,
Right.
right? I have some really horror stories, and it's a client of mine that helped me
Mm,
build this together. She has had a grandson who's been through the
mm,
ringer. So it's coming
yeah.
from experience. But so we train magistrates, and then we also collect bail bond funds. So we're just starting that
Mm-hmm.
process now. We have a goal, and then so some of the underserved populations, if you have a disabled child or
Mm-hmm.
adult in the system and you can't afford the bail bonds, maybe something happened. I had a student who he was 19. He broke a bus window with his head. It was a
Oh
mental
my
need.
gosh.
But of
Wow.
course, he was arrested because he broke public property. So then that family couldn't afford the bail bond, right? So
Mm-hmm.
this is a way where, hey, if it's a smaller case like that, it's just $800 or something, we can put up those
Yeah.
fundings to get that child out of the environment of jail,
Right.
which is not the place for
For
somebody
them.
with a mental health condition to
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
And state supported living, the state supported hospital is a better place. But a lot of times without that magistrate training, they're going to jail.
Sure. Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
Mm-hmm.
why those pieces kind of work together, right? So those are our two big
Mm,
pieces. And then, of course, like whatever training we can do, we work with the judge for the mental health court. She's amazing. She has a whole
mm-hmm.
program. So instead of going into traditional jail, you can do the 12-month mental health court program. It's very
Yeah.
rigorous, but these are for people. It depends on, the type of case and criminal
Sure.
case that it was. Certain cases, it doesn't matter. Like you can't, if it's murder, you're not going to be
Mm-hmm.
able to go to the mental health court. But different types of
Mm-hmm.
cases, you can go to mental health court, and it's a different avenue.
Yeah.
So just educating people on what's
Mm-hmm.
possible, educating who puts people in jail, but then also educating families on how to
Right.
avoid it. What other options are out
That's
there if
good.
something has happened, and what is your next
Yeah.
step? Like, so we go in as the advocates to the jail. What's your next
Right.
step? How do what's my process? Just helping them, put them in touch with they have their process, they have their defense
Mm-hmm.
attorneys, right, that are provided by the state, but just giving some
Oh
more,
gosh.
those people are usually
Yes.
very overwhelmed. They're coming in for 15 minutes and telling you, and the person's like, and especially if they have a disability, they may not even
Right.
understand
No.
what they're saying
Mm-mm.
to them. So just coming in and advocating for the family and that person is kind of how we're growing
Yeah.
that
Well,
nonprofit
and
right
that's
now.
so good because I mean that the thing with, I mean, I think this is true about anybody in the justice system, but I mean reoffending, right? Like, so if one kid had a bad day and was
Yeah.
arrested and put in jail, and then he has another bad day. Now he's a reoffender, and so now his probation is stricter, and it's much more rigorous. And for him to be able to get out of that sort of population or assumption of who this person is, it's so hard to then get out of that once you've started in
So
that.
fun. And it's weird. It started there, and it's the same thing.
Oh,
at school.
totally. Right.
They start
Yes.
with that stigma, right? You're the
Yes.
bad behavior problem. You're the in school suspension, out of school suspension. They're the ones that are on the way to expulsion.
Right.
It's very similar with the punitive
Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
So
well, and I think that just
really
emphasizes why education support and advocacy is so important because of what you're telling us, right? Like the most disabled population.
Yeah, because I know the outcomes.
Exactly. Yes, the most disabled population is this
right.
population. And so if we're supporting and advocating for them, again, it changes the trajectory of a kid's life. They don't have to end up there. They don't have to end up there. Like, they're not bad kids, but they feel like failures. No. They don't feel like they can overcome this. They don't have the support. They don't know what's wrong, and they've got to.
Yeah. They don't know what's wrong. And then they put it's internalized.
And then now they
self-medication.
Right. And they have all these adults telling them you're a failure. Right.
Yep. You're never going to amount to anything. All you do is get in trouble. You can't listen. You're skipping class or whatever it is.
Oh, it's I mean, it's terrible. It's so terrible. So I'm so thankful for the work that you're doing. I mean, I know this is just a little corner of the universe, but you're teaching people how to do this well and giving them tools and empowering them to, again, change the pathway of students' lives. And that makes the world better. I mean, I know that sounds a little cheesy, but I think it does. I really do. It makes the world better.
I'm a purpose-driven person as ADHD, as an ADHD or however you want to look at it. And I had to do something that mattered.
Right.
It had to matter.
Yeah.
I had to find that I was making an impact. And so to me, this work was really all that I get up every day. I'm excited to get up and go help families and go help kids. Because they deserve it.
Nicole, thank you so much for joining and being on the couch next door and sharing all the things. I learned a lot. I hope a lot of people feel encouraged. I know people will feel encouraged, but how do we find you if they want to work with you or they want to get more resources or understand more about the work that you're doing? Where can they find you?
Yeah. So familyadventures.com, family ADDventures.com. My handles are at Family Adventures on Facebook, at Family Adventures on Instagram. I kind of live there as a Gen X/millennial.
Yes.
So, that's where I play, and that's where you can find a lot of stuff about what we're doing. I have a TikTok too. My husband helps me with that because he's a little younger. I'm not a TikTok fan, but there's a lot of movement. People want to know about this stuff. So
it's true.
I let him take that over.
Nice. Okay.
He's 50% owner and he's our marketer. So.
Awesome. Love that.
Yeah. Okay. So he helps me with that stuff. Yeah. So help find us there. I have a book on Amazon, Give Grace, Reject Shame, for all the parenting stuff. Loving on your kid with ADHD, loving yourself with ADHD. Not giving up on the battle because it is a battle, but it's a fight worth fighting for sure.
Yes. Well, and you provided a lot. I mean, I'm going to make sure I link that book that you wrote, but also you provided a lot of other resources for people.
Books for advocacy, like rightslaw.com is huge. If you're looking for anything, go to Rights Law. I got to be taught by him. It's so awesome that I got to be, he was my teacher. So
definitely check out the show notes. There's a lot of stuff there, but go find Nicole if you need some help in this area. I mean, God, I feel like this is the golden ticket. You are the golden ticket. I do.
Good.
Come
find us. Come find us and we'll help you. We'll do a free call and talk about what it's looking like at school and how to make it better.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing. It's so needed. And I'm glad people can now know that it's here, they know where to go.
Good. Thank you. And Candace, thank you for all that you do for your community, for your audience, for your clients. Mental health's really close to my heart. So we all need our therapists. We do.
We need each other.
We do.
Yeah. Well, thank you.